Hello, everyone, and welcome back into our weekly Wednesday webinar. I'm so happy to be back here with everybody again. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Danny Robinson. I'm the sales director here at Route Consultant, and I'm really excited to be here with a special announcement for everyone today. For the first time in some time, Route Consultant is ready to let the world know that we have a new preferred lender in the SBA space. And that's what we're here to talk about today, how to secure an SBA loan. So before we get too far into that, let me start with everyone's favorite part of our traditional weekly Wednesday webinar, the disclaimer. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, and is not associated with, nor has any connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Now that we've got that off the table and out of the way, I'd like to take a minute to let you know that GBank out of Las Vegas, Nevada is now the preferred SBA lender for Route Consultant and all of the transactions that we're doing in the FedEx Ground space. So in the spirit of letting everyone know who we've partnered with, I'd like to bring on a good friend of mine. His name is Tucker Herring. He is the Vice President of SBA Lending for GBank, and he's going to dive into a few things with us before we get to our famous Q&A section. So Tucker, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Danny. I greatly appreciate it. Pleasure being here and look forward to answering questions here a little bit later in the process. What I wanted to go over today is really the best way to approach obtaining an SBA loan. And one of the most important points is to provide clear and consistent communication with me and provide prompt responses to documentation requests. SBA financing does require a bit more documentation than conventional loan, but the benefits far exceed the additional requirements, such as a lower down payment or equity injection, which keeps more money in your pocket, a longer amortization period, which minimizes your monthly loan payment, again, keeping more money in your pocket, no prepayment penalties, and no balloon payments. So my suggestions in regards to the process, and before a business acquisition target has been identified, is be proactive in getting basic documentation to me. Basic documentation from the borrower typically consists of personal tax returns, the personal financial statement or the Form 413, W-2s, resume, copy of your driver's license, because being proactive and getting that information to me early definitely saves time later in the process. But once a business acquisition target has been identified, discuss that acquisition with me. We'll talk about the ownership structure, the employees, the vehicles, the manager that might be on staff already with the seller. Talk to me about what the organization looks like, what you anticipate your role being once the acquisition closes. We can talk about the equity injection, any seller financing that might be part of the structure, and collateral requirements. In regards specifically to documentation collection, I'll provide you with a customized list of required documents and templates to help smooth out that process and make it as easy for you as possible. Specifically regarding documents, if you are providing a scanned copy of a document, please ensure that it's clear and legible. The tax returns that are provided, they need to be complete, and the filed version that was sent in with the IRS, because we are required to compare that tax return with the IRS transcripts. In regards to the personal financial statement, you should really treat this document as your family's balance sheet. All of your assets, all your liabilities must be included. It would also be a great help if whenever you are titling the documents that you have to be sent over, providing an applicable and appropriate title to that document makes it much easier on our end, which again, lends to a much smoother process. We're definitely here as a resource for you. So always please feel free to call or email us with questions regarding those documents, such as the 413 projections and business plans. Sometimes those can be a bit more difficult to complete if it's not something you've completed in the past. So SBA lending is really about cash flow and debt service coverage. Basically, the question to be answered is, does the cash flow of the business support the proposed debt? can the historical financial performance of the business pay the loan? Unlike a residential mortgage, there's really no such thing as a pre-approval letter. We are required to underwrite both the business that's being acquired and the borrower. A very popular question these days is about interest rates. SBA loans are based on prime, which is set by the feds. The general consensus is that there might be a small rate hike here in the next 60 to 90 days, probably just a quarter of a percentage point. However, the overriding and general consensus is that over the next 2 to 3 years, we should be in a falling interest rate environment. In regards to collateral, SBA's rule is that any and all available collateral be pledged on an SBA loan if there is an unsecured portion of the loan. And this is not a bank rule, this is an SBA rule. And that collateral outside of what is being required is generally focused on residential real estate. So unless you live in a homestead state, this likely means that your personal residence will need to be pledged as collateral if there is a collateral shortfall. Seller notes are an excellent way to leverage an acquisition when additional collateral is not available. That seller financing lowers the loan amount that the bank makes, and it also provides the seller with a reason to be vested in your interest and your success post-acquisition. So Danny, I'll fire it back to you.
Good stuff, Tucker. I appreciate that. That's fantastic. So when it comes to the SBA lending market right now, I mean, what is GBank really feeling about the FedEx Ground space? I know that there's a reason you guys wanted to come in and do work with us, but what is it really about the FedEx Ground network that's got you guys so fired up about lending in this space?
Yeah, we're very excited about it. Even our CEO came here to Route Consultant here a few weeks ago to really do his best to learn about what this space looks like, what the future looks like, and what it's all about. I personally have, for many years, really enjoyed in working with contractors and helping them achieve their dreams of becoming a small business owner, whether it was someone that has previously owned a business or someone that's never owned a business but really wanted to. That's where my sincere interests really lie, in being able to help these individuals achieve their dream of becoming a small business owner. It's a space that we feel really good about. We see a very strong long-term future in the space, and we're very excited to be a big part of it.
Fantastic. Well, we're really excited to have you on board here at Route Consultant. We know you guys are going to bring a lot of value to our contractor network, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have you here. So real quick, before we launch into the Q&A portion of the webinar, a quick reminder, you'll see a chat box and a Q&A box. The Q&A is where you ask the questions. I'll read those off, and Tucker will put his 2 cents in on these things. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a second to highlight a couple of events that we have coming up here at Route Consultant. One of those being the November 6th and 7th New Investor Summit. We host one of these summits in our offices every 6 weeks or so. If you want to look in the chat box, you can find the link to register for that. But if you're a new investor to this space who's excited to learn more about what can and can't be done in the FedEx Ground world, this is the perfect starting point for you. You're going to come into our offices, meet with our team and our higher level management, and really get to intimately understand what a day in the life of a FedEx Ground contractor looks like. Beyond that, it is never too soon to register for our 2024 Contractor Expo and Party. This year, it's going to be in fantastic Dallas, Texas, at the Gaylord there in Dallas, and we can't wait to see you all there. Please register and book your room now. Make sure you get the best rates and get ahead of the crowds. No time like the now to act on that. We hope to see each and every one of you there, okay? Now, one last quick thing before we launch into you guys' questions. I already see them starting to pour in here. We wanted to highlight a new business that we brought to the market in Eastern Tennessee. This is a 17 route P&D operation priced at $1.25 million, which represents just over 67% of total revenue. That has you running about a 17.5% margin of EBITDA with 1 manager on staff, 4 spare trucks, an assumable truck debt option with a great roster of really well tenured and experienced drivers. They are rural routes, which offer you the best growth opportunities in the P&D space and the most lucrative variable rates on your contract. And this business operates on just a 6-day work week, so no Sunday deliveries here. If you're interested, reach out to me directly. I'm brokering this specific listing, daniel.robinson@routeconsultant.com or info@routeconsultant.com. We can get to you that way. But now let's launch into our favorite time of the day. The Q&A. So from David Branch Tucker, David asks, what is the minimum debt service coverage ratio that GBank looks for in their SBA loans for a FedEx Ground deal?
We're looking for a 1.2 for the previous year's tax return and year to date.
Good stuff. 1.2. We can make that work. We can price things there. I can work with you on that, Tucker. Appreciate that so much, David. Great question. Similar quote or question just came in from our friend Neil Cohen. Yeah, Neil, we've got 1.2. That's the debt cut service ratio that we're looking for. Thanks for asking. David Safi, what is the minimum credit score requirement for a larger loan?
Well, the term, the word big really is subjective. Typically, we're looking for 650 and above.
Good stuff. 650 and above. Now, I think it's a good time. What type of specific SBA loan is it that you specialize in at GBank, Tucker?
We provide 7A loans, which provides the borrower to put in an absolute minimum of 5% equity injection. Goes up to a maximum loan size of 5 years. Excuse me, for 10 years.
Excellent. Is there a cap on how much you can borrow there?
Up to 5 million.
5 million. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Anonymous attendee. We always get a few of you guys out there. Don't be afraid to share your names. We won't hurt you. Can you elaborate more on the need for pledging personal residence as collateral and why that might be necessary, or if it's a given for all SBA loans?
All right. So once a final loan amount is determined, we take the discounted value of the vehicles that are being acquired and apply that to the loan amount. And that provides us with an unsecured portion of the loan. SBA's rule is that if a personal residence is owned by a borrower, then that residence must be pledged as collateral on the loan. At that point, if there is still an unsecured portion of the loan, a life insurance policy is secured to cover the remainder.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Trevor Snyder, a good friend of Route Consultants, asks, how important are historical financial documents like prior year's tax returns for SBA approval, specifically in the FedEx space?
Yeah, they're incredibly important. I mean, they're required. We require an absolute minimum of 18 months of proven revenue on any business that's being acquired. So yeah, we have to have at least one tax return.
Gotcha. Perfect. Daryl Kelly, moving on down the line, he has asked, what experience does GBank have underwriting loans for the FedEx business?
The experience that we have a dedicated team of individuals, both underwriters and closers, that almost exclusively work on FedEx transactions.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I can tell you from personal experience, Tucker knows what he's doing. We have worked on a couple of deals ourselves together, and he's been fantastic to work with. Their experience I can attest to. Raj Shah, another good friend of ours. What is the SBA loan interest rate currently, and how long does it take these days to close on an SBA loan? Great question.
So SBA loans are based on prime. Right now, prime is set at 8.5%. The final interest rate is a spread above prime, but no more than 3% over prime.
Perfect. Perfect. Vincent Gibson, can you use your 401k as collateral?
Yeah, I've never had anyone pledge their 401k. I've had individuals use a ROBS platform to basically generate the equity injection. Other than personal residence, the most common form of collateral is either a vacation home or maybe a CD. But I've never seen anyone pledge a 401k.
I can't say that I have either, though I have seen the ROBS program used to finance the initial capital injection for an SBA loan. I have seen that. Marcos Enrique, can we get contact information for GBank and a sales rep information for Route Consultant? Absolutely. Hit us up at info@Route Consultant. Anyone who's looking to get in direct contact with us, we will figure out exactly where it is you're looking for help, what region, what sector, and we will have the right person get in touch with you. And it generally takes less than 24 hours for that to happen, Marcos. Okay. David Safi, what are the requirements for a new contract owner? That's kind of a broad question, but I think what he's really getting to is what are the requirements going to be as far as getting approved for the loan? Is there anything that you guys need in excess of your standard documentation for someone who's new to the FedEx space?
I was going to answer that question and from the perspective of experience. First and foremost, we don't require someone to be an existing or previous business owner. We have financed a number of acquisitions to individuals that have experience in, say, recruiting, hiring, and firing, some P&L responsibility, leadership. What we're looking for are those transferable skills that they can come in, apply to their new business, and be successful.
Excellent. I love that. I love that about you guys. Do you refinance current loans? D. Bauer wants to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we can refinance an institution or conventional loan pretty much immediately. However, seller financing notes have to have at least 24 months of a repayment history.
So you can refinance seller notes as well, not just existing bank notes. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and we can take those out for a full 10 years.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. Raj wants to know if you can elaborate on the collateral requirements. What is it that you are looking for typically as far as the collateral coverage to the unsecured ratios within that loan?
Well, the SBA requires any SBA lender to obtain as much collateral as possible. That doesn't mean that we're going to take your car or anything along those lines. 99% of the time, the additional collateral that's pledged is a residence, sometimes maybe a vacation home, or as I mentioned earlier, a CD. But we have to satisfy SBA's rule of assigning a collateral position on any information or any collateral that might be available.
Fantastic. This is a great question right here from Marcos Enrique, and he asks if we have good income over the last 4 years, but are recently starting a new career opportunity, will that factor into financing?
Everything really comes into effect, but I'm working with an individual right now that's been out of the market for the last 10 years. When he and his wife started a family, they decided that he would stay home with the kids. Now that they're old enough, he's wanting to come back into the market and is looking at acquiring a FedEx route. So an individual's experience is certainly important, but it certainly doesn't need to be something that they're absolutely doing today.
That's perfect. So it can change a little bit here and there. It's not a hard and fast rule. There's always going to be a little bit of nuance, and we're going to have to take things as they come. That sounds about right to me. Naya Win, and I hope I pronounced that right. If not, two points from Gryffindor. Asked multiple questions here. How long will it take, start to finish, to get approved for an SBA loan, assuming we have all documentation ready?
Assuming that you're only talking about getting approved, once I have all documentation, we can get to an approval in as little as 2 weeks. If you're talking about the entire process, the closing process is typically the longest part of the biggest piece of the puzzle. And that's generally anywhere from 30 to 45 days, assuming that everyone is responding to documentation requests in a timely manner.
Perfect. She goes on to ask, do interest rates differ from SBA lender to SBA lender?
They do, but the maximum allowable rate, prime plus 3, is an SBA rule. So if an SBA lender says we're going to charge you prime plus 4, something's wrong.
So you can be anywhere above prime or at prime, but no more than 3% over. Correct. And each lender and preferred lending partner with the SBA is willing and able to set those own points above prime.
Correct.
Okay. Lastly, she asks, in addition, what is the average time of ownership in a FedEx route? Do owners tend to sell or hold on to this investment? And I think I can take that last part on for you, Ms. Wynn. It really depends on a number of different factors. I've got contractors that we have helped for years and years, and they've been contractors for 2-3 decades. And I've also had contractors who buy a distressed business at a good price and they flip it, turn it around, make it profitable, and they're out in about 18 to 24 months. So it really depends on what the exit strategy that you've decided is going to be best for you and your partners boils down to. But at the end of the day, these are very, very good investments that we're helping you guys acquire here, and we're very confident in the space moving forward. Very bullish on what the growth opportunities look like over the next 5 to 10 years. John Webb asks, what about refinancing into an SBA? What do you look for to qualify for a refi?
So we're looking for repayment ability, just like if we're talking about an acquisition. As I mentioned before, conventional debt can be refinanced very quickly. Whereas if we're refinancing a seller note, it has to have 24 months of a 24-month payment history. So what we're looking for, what we're looking for is repayment ability. And if you have a seller note that has, say, a 5-year amortization, or you're running up against a balloon, as long as there's been 2 years of repayment, we can look at re-amortizing that over a full 10 years.
I'm curious myself to take that just one step further. Is there a level of underwriting that you're going to do on that business again at the refinance, or is just the historical payments and cash flow that you're seeing from the settlement statements enough for you?
Yeah, we have to underwrite it per the SBA guidelines, but so that's what we follow.
Perfect. What info do I need to start an application to purchase a route? Can I get pre-approved for a certain amount and then shop routes?
There are no there are no pre-approvals. It's very unlike buying a house. It's a totally different process than securing a residential mortgage. We have to prove per SBA rule that the free cash flow of the business supports the proposed debt.
I like that. Brian Bays, what fees are associated with getting an SBA loan?
Typically, you're looking at a $2,500 packaging fee. If you ever have an SBA lender that says they're going to charge you an origination fee, you should turn around and walk out the door. Standard fees apply. There's legal fees, a business a business valuation is required, an equipment appraisal is required. If there is a residence that's being pledged, we typically do a desktop appraisal, so that fee isn't generally all that much. But there are closing costs associated with getting an SBA loan. One point of good news, it was a recent change with the SBA. They eliminated all guarantee fees on SBA loans of $1 million and below.
And that's for the loan amount, not for the purchase price of the business, right? That $1 million cap. Yep. Mike Swierzeski asks, when you're talking about requiring your primary residence as part of collateral for an SBA loan, do you accept an owned rental property, residential versus primary residence? And there's some nuance here. I'm excited for you to be able to share here, Tucker.
Absolutely. There is the possibility of doing that. However, if after the discounted value of the property is applied to the loan balance, if there is still a collateral shortfall, and if it exceeds a certain number, we might still have to look at taking the primary residence.
Fantastic. So are there any geographical limitations to GBank and where you can lend?
None at all 50 states.
Beautiful. Does DSCR of 1.2 include the debt service for seller financing or just the SBA debt? Great question.
Yeah, so it really depends on what the terms of that seller financing are. If the seller financing does not have any type of standby period, then we are required to calculate what the payments are on the seller note and include that in our debt service coverage financing ratio.
Perfect. Let's see then. What can be used as collateral besides cash, says Linda Cox. So Linda, we've talked a lot about real estate, but really anything that you have that can be collateralized. Tucker is saying that that is going to ask to be pledged by the SBA.
Yeah, and cash isn't really a collateral item simply because it's liquid. It can be there one day and it's gone the next.
Perfect. David Safi again asks, does GBank also finance routes once acquired? Do you guys have any sort of operational loan that you can provide, or is there operating capital built into the SBA loan during acquisition? What do you think, Tucker?
So when we provide an acquisition loan, we provide 4 weeks of operational capital. We provide enough funds to take care of the transfer of ownership of the vehicles. And we also provide an emergency fund. So something that's very important to us is when we finance the acquisition, that this new business owner is very well set up from a capital perspective. We don't want them worried about paying their bills in the first 30 days.
No, I think that's one of the more attractive things that you guys build into your loan structures. I know it's been very appreciated by the contractors that I've helped acquire a business through you. So Linda Cox asks, what can be used to satisfy the equity injection?
Cash.
That's perfect. And if that question arose when we had talked about your Rob's 401k, a Rob's 401k rollover is a program where you essentially are selling stock of your business to your 401k for a liquid cash injection. So it's still cash that's being injected. You're just achieving those funds through a Rob's 401k rollover. It's always cash when it's a liquid injection. Raj Shaw with another good question here. For a business that has consolidated tax returns but has 1099-S and P&L as well as other related financial statements, not having the specific tax return, so we're talking about carve-outs here, would this be an issue from for an SBA application from GBank's perspective?
Whether it's an issue or not it really depends on what information can be provided by the seller. What we would require in that situation is a documented and detailed P&L of what's being acquired, what's not being acquired, and ensure that those two added together equal what's on the tax return. So we would need that for the previous tax return and the year to date.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Kenny Sandhu said, how about investment properties? If my property is pledged to another SBA loan for another business, can I also pledge the same property, investment, or primary? So that would have GBank as second in line on the lien, is what it sounds like to me. What is that? How does that play out with you guys?
From what I read, it looked like we might be in a third position. So if there is other collateral available where we would be in a second, most likely that's where we're going to put our focus. But investment properties can be pledged.
Excellent. Do you guys, when you're talking about the outstanding balance of what's unsecured and needing a life insurance policy to fill that gap or to bridge that gap, does GBank being second or third in line on a bit of collateral, does that increase the unsecured bit of debt for the loan?
No, whether we're in a second or third or fifth position really doesn't matter. That discounted value is applied towards the unsecured portion of the loan, and it leaves us with an overall unsecured portion, and it's that number that we get covered by a life insurance policy, which is generally quite inexpensive.
Perfect.
Because it's a term policy for 10 years.
Oh, that's perfect. An anonymous attendee asks, what are the factors that determine the spread over prime at GBank?
Risk. We're looking at the financial ability of the business being sold to cover the proposed debt, and we're looking at the experience of the borrower.
So a combination of cash flow and profitability projections and experience are going to dictate how far above the prime you guys are going to set the interest rate.
Right.
Perfect. Can you refi the institutional loan and subordinate the seller held note second? John Webb wants to know.
A lot of that's going to have to do with the technical terms surrounding that seller note. If it's on standby, if there's a standby clause. So pretty tough to answer that with a broad-based answer. Too many details to really take into account.
Perfect. David Branch with a very good question. He says, when you mentioned a business plan, does this indicate that you need a separate business plan from the prospectus and RFI that would be presented to FedEx Ground?
An RFI is generally acceptable. There might be some points that need to be included, so we'll ask that those be added. But for the most part, an RFI covers the bullet points that we need covered.
Fantastic. And anyone acquiring a business through Route Consultant, of course, you can work with our consultants and they'll help you craft an RFI, or we have templates that you can use if you don't want to opt for the full-scale consulting program. We're happy to help with any of that. Just reach out to us at info@routeconsultant.com and we're happy to send those details along to you. Okay. Linda Cox, this is something actually Tucker and I were talking about just this morning. Does veteran status help in any way?
You know, from time to time, the SBA does put in incentives for veterans. I don't know of any that are going today, but from time to time they do that, and they are typically temporary. Sometimes they'll last 12 to 24 months. I hope they come along as frequently as possible because working with veterans is something that's very important to me.
I love that. We were talking today, veterans are our ideal contractors. The speed and ease with which we can get veterans approved through FedEx is something to take note of. Marcos Enrique says, thank you for the responses. We're happy to do it, Marcos. That's why we do this every week. We love this. But he says, lastly, if there is no residential collateral to pledge, what would the SBA then require?
If there's none to be pledged, there's none to be pledged. So we would require a life insurance policy to cover the unsecured portion, and we proceed from there.
That's fantastic. When it comes to collateralizing the loan, will you collateralize working capital? Example, $50,000 down payment and $25,000 in savings for working capital. Will the $25K be collateralized? We had talked about this a little bit, Joel. Cash is typically not going to be looked at as collateral. Was there something else that you wanted to add to that, Tucker?
Not that we didn't discuss earlier, no.
Perfect. Neil, I think that's a good question. We'll answer that one offline. Ronnie Rivera asks, what are the interest rates based off of when applying for the SBA loan? We did talk about this a little bit, Ronnie, so I'll just summarize that it's going to 100% be based off of the prime rate plus no more than 3% per SBA guideline. And your experience and the credit worthiness of the business will really dictate where you fall between prime and prime plus 3. And as far as the personal credit score, Tucker, do you want to just one more time tell them what you're looking for minimum on in general? And then I know it's going to probably vary from deal to deal. Yeah,
generally 650 and above.
Perfect. Let's see here. What else we got? Doug Jones, are there any special considerations or advantages or disadvantages to an SBA loan if you're a service disabled veteran looking to potentially set up a SDVOB? I know that you just said that there's sometimes some benefits. I don't know anything about the disabled aspect being added into that. Tucker, can you provide some clarity there maybe?
No, I don't know of any other. No, not at this time anyway.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, again.
Gotcha. Yeah. Ms. Wynn is back and asks, is a business proposal needed for getting an SBA loan? I know that we had said that a business plan is required as part of your documentation collection and your due diligence efforts for underwriting. But as far as a business proposal, would that just be the 3-year projections that you guys want to see for the business?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what she means by proposal. But we do get projections. We do get a business plan. If there's some additional information that I can answer on that topic, please let me know.
Perfect. Daryl Kelly, if someone currently has an SBA loan and is looking to expand their stake in FedEx Ground, can they get another SBA loan?
Yeah, absolutely. We do that all the time. The maximum exposure per borrower is $5 million. So you could have a $2 million loan and a $3 million loan at the same time.
Fantastic. Julius Zhang asks, what about a partial sale of the route and not the whole route? We did touch on this just a little bit, Julius. Again, it's gonna really greatly depend, Tucker, correct me if I'm wrong, on the entirety of the documentation we have access to. If we can go back and prove earnings for the carved out portion and juxtapose them with the entire business before it was carved out and it all matches up on the tax returns, there's a world where we can get that funded. Is that right, Tucker?
Exactly, along with a letter of attestation from the CPA. If they add up, then we're good to go.
Perfect. Vincent asks a little bit of a broad question here, but I think it's worth touching on. Is there a reason a route is not eligible for an SBA loan? And typically, I can speak from my experience here, the duration that the business has been open is going to be a huge factor there. If it's someone who just bought this business 12 months ago, we don't have a tax return, we don't have 18 months of financials, there's a real good chance that that's something that the SBA is just not going to want to take a look at. But what do you think about that, Tucker?
No, yeah, I mean, exactly as we discussed before, we're looking for at least 18 months of revenue and at least one tax return. There's also plenty of items out there where eligibility could come into play, but it would really be more focused on the borrower or the guarantor rather, such as a felony, parole, something along those lines.
Gotcha. Excellent. David Safi with another question. And I'll probably answer this one. He asks, for Route Consultant, do we apply for an SBA, the GBank, loan for financing a route before or after you put in an inquiry? So this brings up a couple of things that I want to talk about from a little bit of a higher level, David. On top of all the excellent things that we're going to be able to do with funding these deals with GBank, there's also some things that we're going to try to do to make your life easier in finding a business that is approved for SBA loans, or at least been looked at and pre-certified to an extent. But the partnership that we have with GBank is going to have it's going to help us in that regard, because we are going to have GBank pre-certify and pre-qualify some listings based off of some information that we're at Route Consultant going to gather for them on the front end. And then actually in the prospectus, you'll have it noted that it has been pre-certified and pre-qualified by GBank. And I think that will really help people that are looking for something specifically is going to be financeable through the SBA. But Route Consultant is more than happy to make any introductions that need to be made to GBank, and we'll do that once you guys, inquire about something with us. If you say you want to talk to Tucker, then we're absolutely going to get you connected with him within, probably before end of business that day. All right. Ms. Wynn comes back again and asks, how are vested and unvested restricted stock units considered? Can it be pledged, or would we still need them to be considered cash?
Yeah, no, any type of a stock or equity can't be pledged. It's too liquid of an item.
Yep, great answer. A really good question here, and I'm glad it comes up. Anonymous attendee asks, once closed, does the rate continue to adjust with prime as it moves up and down, or is there a fixed period?
Generally, they're adjusting once per quarter. We do have the opportunity and the ability to provide a fixed period. Generally, that fixed rate is not attractive to borrowers because we are all expecting a decreasing or descending interest rate environment in the next 2 to 3 years. A fixed rate is possible. Up to this point, it has not been attractive to any of my borrowers.
Gotcha. I like that a lot. Another anonymous question, and I don't know about this at all. Has the SBA 8A program been completely eliminated? I don't know if you can speak to that or not.
I don't believe so, but it's not something that we're involved in.
Perfect. Let's see here. We're going to pass on that. Will current outstanding EIDL loans with SBA play a factor in getting approved? From Patrick H.
They very well may. If the seller has an EIDL loan, by all means, look at that as an asset purchase and not a stock purchase. There are many businesses across the country that now that their EIDL commitments they're now having to pay on those. Many of them are in a very difficult situation. But if you are looking at a opportunity where the seller does have an EIDL loan, by all means, look at that as an asset purchase and not a stock purchase.
Yeah, that's excellent advice there. Todd Coles asking, is GBank an SBA preferred lender?
Yeah, we absolutely are. Last year, we were the 14th largest SBA lender in the country. Most likely we'll be in the top 10 this year.
That's fantastic. We're going to help you get there. Neil Colin with another great question. Does GBank have a preference for either P&D or line haul, or are you indifferent?
We're equally attracted to both.
Yeah, as are we. Anonymous attendee. Can there be an SBA loan on multiple businesses and the residence has been pledged for each of them? We touched on this a little bit. There's going to be some unsecured debt that's going to be outstanding if they're in a bad position or are not interested in collateralizing there. And you'd have to, make up that outstanding balance with a life insurance policy. Anything you wanted to add there, Tucker?
No, I think you handled that perfectly.
Perfect. Our good friend William Hudson is asking, what is the typical amount over prime your institution charges for FedEx business purchases? What is the least you've charged for one of the businesses? We have touched on it, but I think that it's, with the nuance of what's the lowest that you've been able to provide. Is that something you can answer for us, Tucker?
Yeah, lowest to date was 1.25 over prime.
Yeah.
That was for an existing contractor that was expanding their business. Speaking of which, on a business expansion per SBA rule, it's possible to do 100% financing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And Raj, I see that you just popped in with this one. We touched on it, but I'll do it one more time for you. How long does it take these days to close on an SBA loan? How long does the entire process take? I think that you're going to find somewhere between 45 and 60 days to fund one of these is attainable, but the average may get a little bit longer depending on how smooth the transition of information back and forth is. The best thing you can do is be amiable here. Am I right, Tucker?
Absolutely. We make the documentation request and we'll work as quickly or as slowly as anybody wants to move. If they would like to, wait 3 or 4 days to provide documents that we've requested, then we can move slower. If they provide them the same day, we can definitely move faster.
I love that. Last call for questions. If you have anything, get them into us real quick, Tucker. I wanted to make sure we touched on it for the people. We've been talking a little bit more about some of the things that GBank can do through the 7A program in the interest of refinancing some truck debt. We've talked about refinancing other business loans, but can you talk specifically about what you guys might be able to offer some current contractors or prospective investors in that regard?
There are a number of things that we're developing. Not only to help existing to help with new buyers, but also existing contractors, whether it's refinancing short-term vehicle debt, as we talked about, refinancing seller notes that either have a short amortization or a balloon payment that's upcoming. Conventional debt on FedEx acquisitions is typically 5 to 6 years and required somewhere between a 20 to 30% down payment. We can take that and amortize it over a full 10 years.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. A couple last minute ones popping in here. I'm going to hit some of you guys up with an email address to reach out to me on, but Joel has a question. If using seller financing for a portion, do all of the terms have to be finalized before applying?
Certainly not before applying, but the terms associated with the seller note, they do have to be SBA eligible, and then it needs to be a good deal for both parties, obviously.
Perfect. Kenny Janusik asks, what percentage of down payment does GBank require? 20%, partial owner finance on 10%, question mark. We have touched on this a little bit. Minimum injection is going to be 5% from the borrower. Anything you wanted to add there, Tucker?
Yeah, if indeed a buyer is only going to be putting in 5%, the seller must provide at least 5%, and that must be on a 3-year standby.
Yep, absolutely.
Anything above that 5% that the seller provides, those terms can be negotiated between the buyer and seller. Perfect.
And real quick, Tucker, do you want to share your email address with any of the people that are watching? I've had several people come in and request. You want to just rattle that off for them real quick?
Hey, sure. Yeah. My email address is therring@g.bank. THERRING@g.bank. I work out of Houston. So generally, as far as time zones during the day, more than accessible. So please reach out.
I love that. So really, everyone, I think that's all we're going to have for today. I really appreciate all of you coming in and spending the time with us. And again, thank you so much, Tucker, for being here with us. We're really excited about the partnership we're building with you guys, and I cannot wait to see what we're able to do for everyone next year. But that's all we've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next Wednesday, 3:30 Central.